Hello and welcome to another episode of the Holduptv, the content channel focused on bringing you the content creators behind the content you love to enjoy and consume. Tonight I have a special guest with me who I'm extremely happy she was able to make time for us in her busy schedule. She is proof that there's life at the party and also proof that there's life after the party. She's a good friend of mine. She's an author. She is co-founder of Reach Out Recovery, a health and wellness website, and publisher. She's written screenplays, and man, when I tell you she's got an infectious energy that just really inspires people to do great things. Let me introduce you to Miss Lindsey Glass. How you doing, Lindsey?
Oh, that was the best introduction I've ever gotten. So I'm starting well, I guess.
Good, because I was just making sure I didn't stagger through it. I've been practicing it all day. I wanted to get it just right for you. I know we did our little pre-show introduction, but for the listening audience, how's everything going in these apocalyptic times for you?
You know, things are not bad. A time of great change. Actually, one of the articles we're thinking about putting together now that we're 1 year in is kind of like, where is your life now? Mm-hmm. So like everyone else, I've had a lot of shifts, but you know, all things considered, we're in good shape.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. And you being in the area that you're in, I'm not going to blast it. I'm not going to shout it out. We don't need a bunch of weirdos trying to look you up and figure out where you live. The area that you're living in, I have to imagine it's a pretty great place to be sequestered inside, though.
Yes. If you're going to go through a pandemic, you want to do it in Southern California. That is for sure. We've been really, really lucky. You know, I have 3 dogs, and it's been really important to be able to go outside and see nature and not feel so crazy, because we've been shut down in Southern California for a full year. Yeah. So just to kind of, I know a lot of the country is going through this, but I shared this with a friend who moved back to Michigan last summer. I have not been inside a gym. I have not been eaten inside a restaurant. I have not, I'm a lady and I like my services. I have not had a massage. I have not had a full manicure. I have not. So we've really, you know, it's been quite a restrictive life down here in Southern California.
Yeah, I know, man. It's so crazy thinking about it. Just a little backstory. Lindsey and I met in California, but it's funny, we're actually removed by one generation in Manhattan by the club scene. So meeting you in California was an amazing thing, but seeing how people are dealing with what's going on these days in California it's heartbreaking and it's awe-inspiring. I have to tell you honestly, before we get into the actual meat of the show, your IG videos are inspirational and hilarious at the same time. Is that something intentional, or was it just like, how did you get started with that anyway? Because I don't remember this side of you when I met you in California.
Oh gosh, it's so funny that you're bringing this up. So let me give you the background and then I'll answer your question.
Okay.
I have been asked to do video for years.
Okay.
I do work with my mom, and we joke that she's a momager. But you know, as you know, I was born and raised in New York City. I'm the child of an author. I'm the granddaughter of a TV producer. So we are content creators, right. You know, generations and generations of content creators. But what I was doing pre-pandemic, hence the Where Are You Now article, I was doing this for other people.
Okay.
So basically what happened was I wrote screenplays, but the career didn't exactly skyrocket. So I started doing this for other people, doing their communications, doing their social media. I had a couple bigger clients who really kept me very busy for quite a while. And last spring, one by one, I lost a lot of my business. And what was left was this family company we have, which has always been, you know, I've considered them a client and my passion project, but not my full-time job. And it became my full-time job in the pandemic. And they said, you have to start doing what you've been doing for other people for us. And thank you for saying that they're inspirational and funny, because honestly, I feel old. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this and jumping up and down on Instagram and TikTok to sell books, but that's where we find ourselves. So yes, my goal, when I started doing advocacy, and I'll share with anyone who's listening, I am in long-term recovery from addiction. And when I started doing advocacy many, many years ago, and they started, I was media trained, and they said, you got to make them laugh and you got to make them cry. So that was kind of ingrained for me with the start, especially about this wellness stuff. So I'm making videos about health and wellness. And what I really want to do is leave people with the hope that they need to kind of go down this road, but also, you got to make people laugh if you can. So I like to think I'm funny. I do send them to my friend Laser Kitten, who is an influencer, and she'll let me know if they're funny enough. So
no, I absolutely. So just to let the listening audience know, so the way I came across them was I'd seen you'd written a book, and I was watching one of the videos, and I thought you were just going to narrate the book because that's, I got caught by the title, 100 Tips for Growing Up, which who doesn't need that, right? Who doesn't need additional help? And I'm not being facetious at all. Like, there are quotes in this book, folks. There are passages that I've read where I'm like, oh man, that makes so much sense. I should be organized and efficient. Why haven't I figured this out yet? And it just, seeing it in written form is obviously going to help a great deal. But watching you do the skits in regards to the book, they land really well. Like, I honestly showed it to a buddy of mine. I was like, hey, just check this out. It's not preachy, but I think you would really benefit from this. And he watched the video and he's like, is she someone on television? I'm like, no, bro. I'm like, if she isn't yet, she's going to be now. So buy the book now while you can still get an autograph. Or
bless your soul.
So a little bit more about the book. Tell me about how that project came about. 100 Tips for Growing Up. We haven't talked in a while, so I've missed this portion. How did it all come together?
Okay. So it started, I have this company, Reach Out Recovery. We started this company 10 years ago. It was a nonprofit then. It is not a nonprofit anymore because we had a lot of trouble getting regular funding to create content. So in the recovery and wellness world, they like to give money for services, but they don't like to give money to create content, or we couldn't get it. Right. So we became a for-profit so that we could morally sell our stuff and promote it in the way that we wanted to. So I had come back to Reach Out Recovery, and I was doing their communication. So I was the, content manager, the social media manager, and we started doing an Instagram project that was 90 tips in 90 days. Okay. And I stole it from a recovery slogan, which is 90 meetings in 90 days. So when you go into any kind of recovery, they often try and get you to go to 90 meetings in 90 days, which, as I'm talking about it now, seems crazy, but people do it. So I was going to do 90 tips in 90 days. And it's so funny because the way I tell the story now, I'm like, people were writing in and being like, are these all in one place? I think 2 people asked. I think 2 people wrote us and said, are these all in one place? And my momager said, you need to write a book and make them into a book. And we did. And actually, you know what? I don't think that's what happened. I think I needed some money. It always comes back to that. I think I needed money. And I said, hey, I'll turn this into a book if you give me a small advance. And they did. And I did. So we published the book at Reach Out Recovery. It was our 2nd or 3rd book. We publish coloring books, workbooks, things for people in treatment. And that's what happened. So like 2 people wrote in and said, are these in one place? So I wrote a book.
That's amazing. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. It does not surprise me that you've written a book. I'm actually waiting for the autobiography, but I think this is amazing. And it's funny because the 100 tips, whenever I read through the stuff that comes up on IG or what you're posting on Facebook, It really does kind of, if I hope you don't mind me saying this, but it really does seem like a separate entity than the literature you would read in a recovery program. I just want to start there first and foremost. It doesn't feel like you just took stuff out of those books and made it into your own. Like there's some good gems in there. And how was that like? What was that like, that creative process, just getting it down on paper?
Okay, that's such a good question. So here's what happened. It started with like kind of the recovery tips, and then when I decided to really put it together, what we did was I really went through what I thought was the best advice. So I've been, and I am not shy. One of the reasons I did this book was I've put a small fortune into my mental health and recovery. You know, I was a kid with a lot of problems. And, you know, very fortunately, my family was able to get me the kind of help that I needed. So I have been in some sort of therapy, rehab, or mentorship program since I was 21 years old. And that these 100 tips are the best of the best that I got in those 20 years.
Wow.
So I took the best tips I got from sponsors, the best tips I got from therapists. There's a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy woven in there. There's a lot of like, you know, mentors gave me advice. And then at the end, because such a big part of my recovery was professional growth, was learning how to get a job, keep a job, you know, be responsible, you know, not do ridiculous things. I went into the top tips of entrepreneurs. So I looked at, what's his name? The guy who did Virgin, Brandt. Of course, I'm forgetting his name now. But I looked at a lot of the billionaires and big entrepreneurs, and I chose some of their favorite tips too. And that's what the end is. It's sort of like professional growth and, you know, vision building.
Man, that's it. It shows. I want to give people a chance. So when I met Lindsey in California, we met. I'm not going to shout out any places because I don't get paid to shout these places out. But we met at a shared space, and we shared the same career path. And I remember the first conversation that I had with you. I had talked to a bunch of professionals in California before regarding recovery treatment, and it was always this kind of aura of just kind of like, yes, I'm a sober companion, and this is what I do for a living. But there was always, with you, it was very grounded and real, and I could tell that you cared about people in the process. And I remember you telling me some of the things that you've experienced in your own process, and I don't want to drag you too deep into that, but I do want to talk about the amazing story prior to all of this. You were at one point one of the club kids. People make you. This is not something you can. This is not something you can Google, folks. You had to be there to know, right? And what?
Yeah.
Let's talk about like that. Let's talk about that for a second. Tell me about New York club during your era.
Wow, gosh. So when I grew up in my brother was a little older, and I feel like when you have an older sibling, you grow up a little older. So I really came to age in the late 80s and through, I left New York to go to school in 97. So let's say 90 to 97, I got into a lot of trouble in my youth. And you know, I was a young troublemaker. So I started really young. So people hear that and they're like, how old is she? But, you know, I was like 14 when a lot of that started. So, or even younger. So what was it like? New York City was a very different city then. First of all, we didn't know what we know about that kind of lifestyle. So we were coming out of the 80s. It was the money-making 90s, and people were partying. You know, I just don't remember any sense of that we were doing anything wrong. And I don't think we were doing anything wrong. Certainly at the beginning, it was incredibly exciting and experimental. And, you know, for a kid, I was from the Upper East Side, and I wouldn't say I was sheltered, because when you grow up in Manhattan, you're not very sheltered, but I certainly was privileged. So it was very, very exciting for me to get caught up in that world. And, I was like 15 years old and doing ecstasy with drag queens. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It was probably the most fun I ever had in my life. But it was like a bacchanal. It was just craziness. I remember I was so young, there were rooms they wouldn't let me in at Tunnel.
Right.
Do you remember Tunnel and
I do.
Limelight?
Yes,
And,
yes.
I knew some people that worked there and threw parties there. And I just remember at times being like, no, you're not going in there. Or, a few times you did get in there and it was dark. It was very dark what was going on. And I think that was the problem with it. Like, look, we were dancing to house music before these kids were even, we were doing EDM before the carnivals and the festivals. The people that started the festivals were even born. So I think, the music was incredible and the costumes was incredible. And, it was a different time. There were no cell phones. There's no record of what happened.
Right.
And thank God, right?
Yes, thank.
But, those were the days when, like, you were walking through the meatpacking district as the sun was coming up and there was blood going through the streets because there was real meatpacking plants there. Now it's like Louis Vuitton.
Yeah.
So I guess I would say it was lots of fun. I feel really lucky to have been a part of something like that, like, a cultural thing. But it got very dark at the end and there were way too many drugs.
No, I get it. Were you around for like the whole? I think this might have been before both of us, way before us. But the James St. James type scene, those cats. Did you ever rub elbows with any of those people, or were you lucky enough to never get caught up in the whole disco blood blast stuff?
So here's what's funny. I saw them in those days. I wasn't like friends with them. I was just too young, but I knew who they were and I was aware of them. And I was occasionally, I think, at some of those things. When I met James St. James in LA when I moved out here. So my connection with those people is on the other side.
That's amazing.
Is what's so funny. So, me and my friends, we were kids. Like, maybe we were around them sometimes, but they were kind of like stars.
Yeah.
And I was much more just trying to get in at that point and trying to get in there. But I have met several of them in recovery in LA, like 20 years later.
That's always a trip, isn't it? I think I know one of the people you might have met. And I remember running into him and I was like, holy smokes.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the same person. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. And he's got this great story about how he woke up on a garbage bag.
Yes.
And he says, I got up and I roller skated my way out of there. You're just like, oh my gosh. I actually have a picture with James St. James too from DragCon.
Wow, it's crazy.
I know.
It's insane, dude. Because on the other side of it, you feel blessed to have made it out, right? But you do feel fortunate, or at least I do feel fortunate to have been able to rub elbows and experience that kind of second bohemian boom in New York after the days of like Basquiat in the '80s. It was cool, to have that stuff going on. I know you've written some screenplays before. I've always wanted to ask you. Is there a screenplay that exists about that experience, or is there something you're working on regarding that?
Oh, gosh. My first script was called Rehab is for Quitters.
Nice.
And it was about a 21-year-old who gets sent to rehab. And so there is that. I ended up making a documentary instead of that getting funded. Here's what's interesting. My mom and I, at one point, did write a book together, and it was half of the book was from her point of view and half of it was from mine. So we kind of did Nick Sheff did it with his father and they made a movie of it, and of course I'm forgetting the name right now, but they did the story about Beautiful Boy.
Yes.
And Tweak. So they did that. So we were doing this, and again, this was years before them. And we actually got an agent, and we were shopping the book, and they wanted more gore. And I really, it was something my mom and I were doing. The other members of our family had no part in it. And I basically thought no one would ever forgive me if I did it. And I also thought there's stuff in here I don't need the world to know. I don't need this to follow me around for the rest of my life. And I'll tell you something. You were saying something before, and like the tell-all, and my interest is in telling the recovery story. And I really, all right, can I talk about something for a second?
Go for it.
Okay. So we're watching a lot of television, like everyone else on the planet. We're just going through the Netflix shows. And, my grandfather created Lassie. My grandfather was instrumental in creating television in this country. And, my mom wrote mysteries. And so we have created culture in this country. And we're watching this show, Georgia and Ginny, and we watch this show with Katherine Heigl, and all of these women are drunks. Like, I'm so sick of seeing alcoholic, traumatized women who can't get their lives together. I'm so over it. Don't we know this story?
Right.
Like, don't we want to know? I'm sick of seeing women get done wrong and then drinking themselves to death over it. Like, get real. It's 2021. Like, you want to talk about crystal healing? Come on over. Like, I'll show you how it's done. So, the content we're doing at Reach Out Recovery, my book, my future content, I have a script out now. And it's a self-help rom-com.
Nice.
We're sick of seeing the girl who's 35 and can't get married. And da, 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 da. It's like, the script is called Yes to Me, because the concept is you're not even going to find somebody until you're not that whiny, life working out for me character. So that's my whole thing with the content. Right. Is I believe as content creators, we have a responsibility, particularly someone like me who has so much advocacy in recovery and mental health experience. Like, we need to start telling a different story. Like in Ginny and Georgia, the show, the girl's best friend's a lesbian. They're having a lesbian couple. We're seeing all this different stuff. I'm like, why are people still drunk?
Right.
Like, we're seeing so much more inclusion in television. Are you watching these shows, these HBO shows?
No, not all of them. I am a father of 3 kids, so I get I watch a lot more sophisticated content like Blue's Clues, Paw Patrol.
Fair enough.
But please regale me.
Fair enough. When you get a chance, watch The Watchmen and watch.
Oh, that was a great show.
Another one.
That was a great show. I watched that one.
Yeah, there was another one that was also I'm forgetting the name, but I was honestly, I was floored by the inclusion and the acknowledgement of race and racism and some of the things we're seeing. That I'm thrilled about. If we could just get some sober people that aren't just in AA meetings crying, that would be nice too.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because you're talking about fighting back against a narrative, right? And thus far, the narrative in popular media is, intervention. Never on the other side of the intervention. You rarely get to follow up. You get movies like 21 Days and stuff like that. But is that a battle that you feel like needs to be fought? That you just need to start showing people that there is something happening besides people falling down?
Are you kidding? We've had 81,000 people die this year of overdoses. So it's always interesting when something like, not that we have pandemics regularly, but that people are, the numbers, have you seen the numbers? It's like we lose that many people every 3 years to addiction and alcoholism and overdoses and suicide. So we have a really big problem in this country. We really do.
Right.
there's a new company launching next year, and I'm not allowed to say anything about it, and I'm hoping they're going to work with me. But it will be the first time, if they come together, that, the tech companies and corporate America has gotten behind a recovery company. And one of the reasons they're doing it is because if you work at a big company in America, you don't know where to go for help.
Yeah.
Like there's no mental health leave or, oh, hey, can you tell the CEO I have an addiction problem and I need to go away for 30 days? And could you make sure that I have a really comprehensive plan to return to work where I'll be safe and my mental health will be, it's like we just aren't there yet.
Right.
But I think by seeing, look, you know where I come from. I come from a fairly conservative world.
Right.
Lots of races, but, Jewish, upper middle class. So for me to be watching some of these things on TV, I'm shy. Like I'm watching some of these shows. Have you seen It's a Sin about the AIDS crisis in London?
No, but I heard it's absolutely hard. It's like good, but very hard on the spirit.
It is, but I also think it's interesting, like suddenly, people like myself and my partner who would not be watching stuff like this if it weren't mainstream TV are being confronted with, I have to tell you something, and please don't judge me, blame Riverdale, but in The Watchmen, when they were talking about what happened in Tulsa.
Oh, yeah.
I literally turned to Stan and I go, what happened in Tulsa?
Black Wall Street.
And he looked at me like I was insane.
Yeah.
And I was like, what did I miss? And he explained, and I said, well, they didn't teach that at Riverdale. Like where was I going to learn that? So we are being confronted with, proper history and what different orientation relationships look like. I don't know what that looks like. Now I do. And so yes, I think there's a lot of room for stuff about mental illness and recovery that isn't just the downfall. Because what were you gonna say?
No, go for it. I was taking a breath. Go ahead.
Oh, because here's what I'm pitching. This is what 100 Tips for Growing Up is really about. I got sober and then I had real problems.
Yeah.
Like drugs and alcohol were a solution for me. They made life easier. When you took them away, I was confronted with the fact that I had a lot of problems with my interpersonal relationships. I didn't really know how to take care of myself. I didn't really have adult skills. If there's a 12-step program, I've probably been in it. I was in the one for money at one point, and I don't mean to talk about it at the level of press, radio, and film. I share it because not all of us grow up with parents who are able to tell us how to live life.
Right.
And while mine were incredibly successful, they had their own issues. So I went into adulthood without certain skills, and I learned them in recovery. So what we're doing at Reach Out Recovery is we're saying, hey, getting sober is only step one. Learning how to have healthy relationships with your family, how not to be codependent, how to, avoid toxic personalities or narcissists, how to have a healthy relationship with food and exercise and sleep. That's what interests me. And I think that the journey to get to a fully healthy life, that's what's interesting to me. Not the heartbreak of addiction or getting somebody into rehab, but watching them transform and become a real person from somebody who was really like broken and hopeless.
Yeah, and it's something you don't really get to see, man. I'm getting goosebumps just hearing you talk about it. When you're looking at things now, and it's funny because you used the term, you said your family helped shape and create culture through content. But when you're looking at things now, the way it stands with treatment in America and the way that addiction has been addressed, and there's still people who kind of turn their eye up at the whole disease model of substance abuse, that it's been recognized as a chronic disease. Does that weigh heavy on you when you're doing the work that you do, that people still just kind of see it as, you should just have more willpower?
Oof. Yeah, sure it does, but I look at it the same way as people who have different political beliefs than me.
Okay. That's a good one.
It's like we've gotten to a place where I don't think we should argue about it.
Right.
We can agree to disagree. It doesn't really bother me. I mean, one of the things, look, I'll bring it back to those silly Instagram videos. If I'm worried about what people are saying or thinking, this isn't going to go well for me.
Right.
Because it's such a touchy, I run a recovery website, a wellness website. Do you have any idea the kind of drama we see sometimes on certain posts? And the people aren't reading the articles.
Yeah.
So, I'm a sober person. I live with somebody who drinks regularly and doesn't have a problem. God, I would if I could. And I wrote this article on how to live with somebody who, drinks or does something that you're not allowed to do. And the backlash of like, how could you do that? How could you be with somebody? How could you live with somebody? And at one point, one person in the I don't read them anymore, but somebody told me, somebody wrote in the comments, has anyone actually read this article?
That's insane.
So, that's why I'm kind of like, okay, with these opinions, when you've read it and you've seen both sides and you have all the information, come back and talk to me. I mean, I'm on this, mental health professional, addiction professionals group, and I saw an argument on there once between the people who believe in MAT. You know what that is? Medication assisted treatment.
Yes.
Okay. So it was like the worst argument I've ever seen.
That's
and
why
the
I left
administrator
that
of the group. Okay. So the administrator of the group had to shut down the post and wrote another post that was like, people, like, pull it together. We're the professionals.
Yeah.
And it's like, so that's kind of when you have a topic that it's like religion or politics. That's what addiction is. I swear, it's that touchy.
Yeah, it gets heated, man. Especially, that group was, you just took me back there. Very toxic post in there sometimes. But you guys are creating the type of content that helps shift the conversation. I know that. I'm not even going to say I believe. Like, I do read the articles, and it's a shame we live in a world where it's clickbait and people just move on or they just actively troll. But moving forward into like 2021, 2022, and everything that's happened with COVID, even with the death of George Floyd, what do you think the vision is for you? Like, what are the next steps to help kind of keep fighting this fight?
Wow, you came prepared. It was so funny. I was on a phone call with a friend of mine before this. It was Maurice, the laser kitten. I don't know if you ever met her.
No,
And she goes, well, what are you going to be talking about? And I'm like, I'm not sure. Small business? And she goes, you didn't get the question? I go, no. What? How could you not get the question? So next time I'm getting the questions. What was the question? It was, what's the vision?
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of made it a very broad question, but looking at the type of content you guys make and reading it, and seeing how the year we've been through, everything that's happened, what's the vision for 2021 moving into 2022?
Okay. We do have one. We have a vision. So when the Black Lives Matters things, when that was all going down, one of the things we were trying to figure out, and I will answer your question, we'll get there, is so 100 Tips was approved to be used in its first rehab in Australia. Now, it would have cost more to ship the books to Australia than it would what the books actually cost to get these into this women's program. So one of the things we did in this past year, and it was also because I don't know if I ever talked to you about this, but I did do some stuff with the prison systems.
No.
And so we made everything downloadable. Nice. So you can buy our content and buy the workbooks, or you can download them. And really, we sell things for $1 on download. So while the coloring book is $15, you can have 14 pages of it. We we do 2 steps for $1, and it's 14 pages and however many images. And my book can be downloaded for $3.50, but we also have a sliding scale for certain institutions. And basically what we would like to see is we would like to see our books and our content. And when I say content, we have everything from journal prompts, which for anybody who's listening who's like, what's a journal prompt? One of the things they do in mental health groups is they regularly have people do writings, and you have topics. So we have topics: sobriety, self-esteem, mental health, and it's a journal prompt. So it's like, what's helping my mental health right now? What's hurting my mental health right now? And these, you can download them or you can write in your own journal. So we have articles, we have journal prompts, we have quizzes, we have all kinds of content on the website. And then we have all of these books and posters and workbooks and coloring books that you can have in hard copy or downloadable. So what we would like is to see these books all over the country, all over the world. You made a really interesting point. What we never expected is 100 tips is being used with all different kinds of people. It's being considered for a program that would house homeless. It has been used by parents who have autistic children. There's actually somebody who got in touch with my mother who had given it to her autistic son, and he carries it with him everywhere he goes.
That's beautiful.
I know.
That's great.
I heard that story and I was like, it was worth it. Really worth it. One kid in Florida carries it with him, and it was worth, like, that one person who wrote in and was like, are these in one place? Like, sure, I'll write a book for you. Like, sure, I'll publish a book for your son. But so we'd like to see our content everywhere, because we do believe that we've come at this from the point of view of the patient and the client. So a lot of times when you get these books and these workbooks, not that they aren't wonderful, but they're coming to you from clinical people,
right? Program
directors, clinicians, PhDs, and it's just a different thing. And what we've done, and while this may sound weird to say, most of what you read on the internet is at an 8th grade reading level.
Correct.
So what we have done is taken all of this recovery stuff and brought it down to an 8th grade reading level so that anybody at any stage of recovery can manage it. And by the way, when I was in rehab, I had an 8th grade reading level.
Like I said, way more advanced than most males. I was
Yeah, like I hope no one takes offense to that, because what we're doing is we're taking very complicated concepts and we're breaking them down so that you can actually take the information and walk away with something that is a tip, not some concept. Like if I try to explain to you what EMDR is right now, you're not going to get it. But do you know what that is?
No.
Eye rapid. It's a type of therapy where you have to move your eyes back and forth really quickly. And, you know, it's really hard to explain these things. But when you can hand somebody a book and there's a very simple explanation with notes on how to achieve it and then room to journal, you're letting them take the concept and process it and then have their own experience with it. Does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense, man. And I think that's why it's so important. This is one of the reasons why, one of many reasons I asked you to come on this show, is because I want to be able to give people the opportunity to get to know some of the greatest thinkers that I've ever encountered. And as far as in regards to business and your approach to recovery and that willingness to share it, this is the exact reason why I wanted to have you on the show. I don't want to monopolize too much of your time, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this question, because my female listening audience would be furious with me. You brought up something earlier, and I've been holding on to it, and I want to make sure I give you a chance to speak on it. The depiction of the recovering woman in popular media just being the fall down drunk, and then by the time she gets her life together, the movie's over. You and I both know that that's on one side of the spectrum. Do you think that it's, and I know you've already said this, but is there a way that you would like to see that change? And if you were the person, the producer, how would you change it?
I would start the story on the road to redemption. That's what I would do. I would paint the picture of what the journey looks like instead of, there's that silly phrase, you've seen me fall, now you're going to see me rise.
Yes.
But we've never seen anybody rise.
Yes.
Like, we want to see somebody rise. And so I don't mean to repeat myself, but in that script we wrote, Yes to Me, the women end up going off to follow a self-help woman who's teaching them that they have to love themselves first. So I am absolutely going to try and brainwash people with positive versions of this character, and also the really inspirational and I think poignant things that happen when somebody actually gets better. It's one thing to say, oh, she's out of rehab, they're back in the White House with the white picket fence.
Right.
Well, let's spend a year with her.
Right.
Let's start the story, getting home. And then what I think is people need to understand this better. And the only way they're going to understand it better is if we show them what it looks like. So I know it's very exciting, and you're going to have to control yourself while I get them all done. But, some of the videos I'm thinking about making next are, and if anybody steals this, I'll know where you got the idea, and Stephen will find you.
Lawsuits rain down.
Seriously. So, but I'm gonna do some funny skits of what it looks like to have a conversation with somebody who has a certain kind of mental illness. Or, we literally were talking today about what I should be doing next. And the conversation was, you really need to depict, people hear these words, narcissism, codependent, but they don't really know what it means.
Right.
They don't actually know, like, we have an article called Arguing with a Narcissist that's been read, 100,000 times. But what we could do in a video in 30 seconds, to kind of show what that would look like, that's going to be different. It's going to be different for the young people who don't read my articles. I jest, but in seeing a 30-second clip of, you think, oh, well, my boyfriend's just really difficult, or, oh, my girlfriend's just, she's just in a bad mood. And it's like, well, no, maybe you're dealing with a toxic personality. But how would you know at 18, 24 if somebody wasn't showing you what it looks like?
That early intervention is key. There's another thing I wanted to bring up to you. So you did a great skit on IG. That's where I caught it, at least, and you were showing the different the different versions of a person in recovery. You have two.
Oh God!
And I thought that was amazing. I'm not going to blow it for anyone because I'm not going to be able to tell the joke or do it over a podcast. But I think that was absolutely amazing because I was kind of floored by looking at you act out the stages. I'm like, man, I know she's doing it for women, but this is quite literally superimposed on a guy, except for with wrestling.
Yeah.
How many, I got to ask, how many takes does it take to get that right?
You know what's funny? So I was a comedy writer. I would say I'm not an actor at all, so it's just me. And literally my friend goes, oh, it's you and your 6 personalities, huh? And I'm like, pretty much. It's not, I'll tell you where I struggle. It's not in getting the take. It's in the friggin' camera. The camera angles and setting up the thing and keeping the jacket from popping open. And I'm like not a perfectionist. So my friend calls, she's like, who's styling these videos. I'm like, I am. What are you trying to say? She's like, I can see the Nike sign through your shirt. I'm like, well, I don't care, and I'm not remaking it. So yeah, it's not what I spend time on is actually trying to put them together. I think my decades of screenwriting, they're pretty much written before I do it. They're written in my head. And just to add to that, I have pretty much had everything I've written optioned, and nothing's gotten made. So only my documentaries have gotten made yet. But I think, and the people close to me have said, you're liking this so much because you're actually getting to make your own stuff for once. And I think there's some truth to that, that it's so entertaining for me because for the first time ever, I'm actually seeing my own, even though it's just Instagram and me with my, little following, it's still, I'm getting to see something come to fruition. And there's something very satisfying about that.
I hear it, man. Listen, I don't want to, I don't want to inflate the ego, but I am here to help make people feel better. I see influencer written all over all those videos, and then I'm like, oh, I'll go do something like this. 2 takes, and I'm like, all right, this is definitely a Lindsey thing. I am not that guy. No talent there. But no, it's there's so much crummy content that you can come across on IG. Just so many silly things, and I don't want to put people down, but there's just a lot of trash. And to see that you've brought humor to what's a very serious subject it's amazing to me. The video that really caught my attention was the one where I commented, I was like, man, this is hilarious, and I could not stop laughing, was when you were just going through the process of like discarding and organizing. And I just I thought it was amazing. I've watched that Netflix show with the woman who
Marie Kondo.
Yes, and I'm like, okay, this and nothing against her. I was like, this is not for me. My attention span's not there. But in 30 seconds, I'm like, okay, and it could be because we're friends. But in 30 seconds, I was like, this all makes sense to me. So, man, I just wanted to give you the biggest shout out when you came on the show. And do you want to plug and invite people to your IG and tell them where they can reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, do you want me to do it?
Yes, ma'am.
You're like, no, you do that. Okay. Yeah, I would love it. It's Lindsey Glass, LindseyGlass, and then 4 1s. So 1111. And I was trying to be cute there with numerology because I couldn't get Lindsey Glass. So it's Lindsey Glass 1111, and it's the same on TikTok. And but most of all, reachoutrecovery.com. Go to our shop, check out our books, see if anything appeals. If you want, email me or DM me and I'll give you a discount code.
Come on, people, pay full price, support. And all her links are going to be in the description below. And Lindsey, you were one of my highlighted interviews for the month, and I also got to admit, you were one of the people that inspired me to do this. I tried to write a few articles for Lindsey, and I was always very self-conscious about what it took to do that, but I always figured, hey, I sound better than I look, so I might as well stick with podcasting. So thank you for helping me get here. And do you want to take the show out with a shout out? Any inspirational words?
Oh, gosh. I just want to say thank you to you. You never know who you're making feel really, really good when you like something or you say it's funny. And I'm so glad we're still friends and in contact. And yeah, I just, my whole message is we're 1 year in. Take care of yourself. Take care of your mental health. If you're struggling with an addiction, there are lots of places to get help. And it's actually not as hard as you think to get better. It's just not. So there's lots of hope and there's lots of great things out there in life, and you just have to decide you want it.
That's it, folks. Lindsey, thank you again for blessing us with your time. This was amazing for me, and I'm sure it's going to bless someone else. This has been the Holduptv, people. Stay positive.